Hey everyone, you're tuned into InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy. Join us as we talk about anything.
And everything.
All the stuff that makes life interesting.
So let's get to it. Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm Amy.
And this podcast, we're going to be talking about a documentary you recently saw on Netflix by David Attenborough. What's it called?
It's called The Life on Our Planet, and it was just released October 4th, but we watched it today, and we were not disappointed.
No, it was really eye-opening, for sure. The planet is in rough shape, and we need to get back to action, and that's basically the crux of this documentary.
Right, and our cat Charlie agrees, if you can hear him in the background.
Yeah.
I think people are probably familiar with David Attenborough. He has done a ton of documentaries, nature documentaries over, his entire lifetime.
Yeah, he's 93 now, so...
Yeah, which is fascinating. I think we were both blown away that he was 93 and doing this documentary and so passionate about the work that he's done, and has made a career of. And one of the opening statements that is made by Attenborough is, "We've destroyed it. The natural world has gone." He says, "Human beings have overrun the world. That is my witness statement, the story of global decline over a single lifetime." And that really sums up what the documentary is about. So I hope, listeners, that you'll take the time to watch the documentary. It's incredibly powerful.
Worth it. Yeah,
it's hard to watch.
It's both like a treatise on his life, like his biography of his life and his lifelong dedication to exposing the wonders of the world of nature, and travel and then there's the evil side of things, and it's all stuff that we as human beings have done to the earth, which is so depressing.
It is. So we had a few other podcasts. I had a few other podcast episodes researched, and then we watched this documentary today, and we said, you know what, we need to do an episode specifically on this documentary because I think it struck a chord with both of us, and we just wanted to spread the word on it. I mean, any Attenborough documentary has spectacular cinematography, like the footage of wildlife and just these beautiful landscapes around the world. That alone is worth watching. It's about an hour and a half, so it's not a huge time commitment.
For me, his passion is what's worth watching with this documentary, and all of his productions, but particularly this documentary. He is so impassioned. I mean, he's spoken wherever you can, at the UN, in Davos. Like, they have quick little clips of him speaking to world leaders about the peril that our planet, we're screwing it up. Anyway, sorry.
Well, no, amazing. I mean, that's exactly what this is about. This episode isn't really around spoilers. I think we're going to touch on some of the content that's covered in the documentary, but there's so much. It's so rich with information data and just visual footage and just Attenborough's, commentary that we couldn't cover it in 30 minutes, but we're going to touch on some of the things that I guess were memorable for us, and just have a little bit of a discussion around it.
There are extreme glimmers of hope and renewal, ideas of renewal within the documentary as well, which I'm sure we'll touch upon.
I mean, there's very much a sense of urgency with this documentary. I think even, he, in that opening statement I read, he talks about it being his witness statement.
Yeah.
So I think he very much, what I took from that is he sees this documentary as almost a summary of his life's work and his last chance to give a warning to humanity. I mean, at the age of 93, for him to take the time, like he's saying, this is my opportunity to give that warning, to sound the alarm one last time, and hope that somebody is listening about what's going on. So the way that it's set up, it's quite fascinating. It goes back in time, and it really looks at the changes in the world that have taken place over the course of David Attenborough's lifetime.
Yeah.
So it sort of starts out with this, depiction of him as an 11-year-old boy, exploring the landscape, the rocks and fossils, where he grew up. And it snaps to different bits of footage, from, I guess, various documentaries he's done throughout his career. So you get to see things from the 50s, all the way up to current day, and just get a glimpse of what he's seen of the world and why he is, I guess, so passionate about this topic. And one of the things that they do throughout, to kind of give a bit of a timeline, is he flashes up these 3 key statistics. So he looks at, at the beginning of his lifetime, what the world population was, what the level of carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, and then what the percentage of wilderness is that's remaining on the earth. So that untouched land that's remaining, because those must have been the 3 statistics that he felt were very, I guess, telling in terms of where we are for climate change.
Yeah. And
the introductory scene has him walking through Chernobyl, which, of course, if you're not familiar with it, a Ukrainian city that underwent a nuclear explosion in 1986. So they evacuated. They had I think within 48 hours, the entire city evacuated, and people have not gone back since. So he's walking through this city that is just starting to be, it's abandoned and starting to be reclaimed by the natural world.
Yeah.
With trees growing up.
And that was one of his main points with that, is that no matter what we do as human beings, nature is going to take over and do the best that it can, And it's not just like, trees and shrubs and stuff that will grow back. It's the oceans. It's like the ice caps. It's like, it's... Anyway. Yeah.
Well, along that lines, I think one of the lines that stuck out for me, and I think it was, in his way, maybe he was trying to appeal to the people who are amongst the most selfish in our population, it's that he's not trying to give the message we have to save our planet. He's like, our planet will save itself. Life will remain, it'll be sustained, but he said it's about saving human life and mankind, because he said that the world has shown us time and time again that it can go through a mass extinction of a species and recover. It won't look the same, but life will continue on in some form.
Right.
So I think I interpreted his message to be that, almost reaching out to those who are like, well, even if you don't really care about the planet because you don't think of it as directly affecting you, he basically reached out and is saying the planet will continue on.
Yeah.
But you as an individual may not.
What's it going? I mean, he does go through the different points that he has that, will rectify this problem in modern times. Like, this generation did so much that it would be easier for the next generation to take over and continue on improving the planet. But I mean, are people going to do it? Are people going to make those decisions, those changes in their lives? And some of the things that he touched upon were really interesting, like, in a natural way, decreasing the population of the planet, limiting the amount of children that people are allowed to have and stuff, and so that we don't have like an extreme amount of population in order for, because all we do is consume, we don't give back. Anyway.
Well, that's right. So, the idea around the documentary, I think, the vast majority of the documentary is spent around, climate change and focusing on the impacts and what he's seen during his lifetime. But there is hope near the end.
There is a lot of hope at the end.
He does offer potential solutions. And the idea of population control, I don't think he says it in a way that is, like a government imposing population control,
no.
But he just puts out the suggestion that the fact that, as a human population, we've grown exponentially, and that is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
Our planet is not able to sustain the level of population growth we have. So when you think about, evolution, other animals will evolve physically. Mm-hmm. In terms of adapting to their environment. So if they want to make sure that they have continued survival, survival of the fittest, over generations, they will slowly adapt physically to their environment to just make sure that their species continues on. But the difference with, humans is with our level of intelligence, we don't need to wait until our bodies evolve and adapt to the environment. No. We are able to use ideas to overcome our environment, and then we've been able to create ourselves, like basically sustain ourselves and develop food sources, shelter, things that have allowed our population to grow exponentially within a very short period of time.
Yeah, exactly. Those things that help us, though, are being exploited, like fossil fuels. Why aren't we moving towards an energy source that's away from fossil fuels? Like, why haven't we done that? It's because politicians and whomever, like, they believe, like, and it's true that there probably would be jobs lost if the fossil fuel economy was done or whatever, and cars would, everybody would have electric cars and stuff. But is that honestly, like, at what expense, though, is what I'm trying to get at. Like, what do we need to do in order to get back to saving this planet from what it's going through? David Attenborough really, really, really exemplifies those issues excellently in this documentary, I find.
Yes, he talks a lot about renewable energy sources, and some of the examples were very surprising. He talks about Morocco having a solar energy farm that is meeting 90% of their country's energy needs. Mm-hmm. He talks about the Netherlands developing indoor farming, so that they're able to actually, despite having not a huge landmass, still able to export they said vegetables because they have
the second largest producer of food on the globe, I think is what he said. Yeah, I could be wrong with that exact quote, but
well, when you look at the population growth, just to put it in perspective, so as of March of 2020, it's estimated the world's population is 7.8 billion people. And if you kind of look back in time, it took 2 million years for the human population to reach 1 billion.
Yeah.
And then it only took another 200 years for us to get to 7 billion. Seven times that. I mean, those numbers
must have done studies to figure out how many is too many people for this planet to take care of, because the more people, the more the planet is exploited, it seems,
Well, and I mean, there, in terms of the solutions, another solution that's discussed is just around the idea of having more of a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
That when you look at, animals, large predators, which is what, when we're eating meat, and what is needed to sustain them in terms of farmland and other animals.
Yeah.
It's there's a huge demand on the earth, on land, to sustain a meat-eating diet.
But if we went to a more agrarian, diet, that we'd be able to grow our own food and do it in an unending way where it wouldn't take away from the planet.
Well,
kind of thing.
Exactly. And one of the stunning statistics that he said to me was, when you look at mammals across the earth, like all of the animals that make up mammals,
mm-hmm.
if you look at humans and then all of the domesticated animals that we basically raise just for the purpose of sustaining humans, so
yes.
Domesticated animals we raise to eat,
yeah,
that makes up 96% of the Earth's mammals by weight.
Oh, wow.
So when you think about all the other animals that are just roaming the earth in the wilderness, only 4% of those mammals are existing just for the sake of existence. 96% insane. Are either humans or mammals being raised to feed.
So only
humans.
like 4% of the mammals on the earth we don't eat. That's crazy.
Well, and I mean, he talks about the idea of sustainability and the rate that we're clearing rainforests. I remember being in junior high and doing a paper on rainforests specifically.
Yeah.
And how the importance of the importance of biodiversity and just in sustaining life. And at that time, I think it was very much in the news for the first time that rainforests were being cleared at an astronomical rate.
Yeah.
And, he makes a very simple, solid point that if we are depending on clearing these forests to survive and they're diminishing, that by definition is not sustainable, that we will run
Absolutely.
out and it's not a sustainable source. So we
Yeah.
need to find other ways
And when
to
these
sustain
forests,
ourselves.
and when these forests are gone, so are the animals that were in it. So are all the flora and fauna,
Well, yes, I know. One of the things when you think about rainforests is just the sheer volume of species that exist. A lot of them yet to be discovered even. And he talks about, orangutans specifically. And there's some footage in the documentary that's, kind of tugs on the heartstrings a bit. But, orangutan mothers spend 10 years teaching their young just which fruits are worth eating. And when he says that, when he says which fruits are worth eating, they teach them this so that they disperse the seeds throughout the forest. So it's important for them to have a variety of fruits in their diet, but as a species, they also understand their role in maintaining the biodiversification within the rainforest. So they eat the food, and then, of course, obviously, through excrement or whatever, they disperse the seeds, and that keeps the cycle going. So you think about, in the animal kingdom, a parent spending a full 10 years with their young to teach them that.
10 years.
And then we come through and just clear-cut that biodiversity and, plant with a monocrop. And they talk about palm oil as being a monocrop that's often used, when they clear cut rainforests. So it's, there's a lot of interesting things when you look at what other species know innately to do to sustain life, to sustain the world, and then what we do as humans.
How did watching what you saw while watching this documentary change your worldview after watching it, though? Like, what are you going to change? What do you think the average person, let's just say, would change after watching this documentary? Are they just going to watch it and think, oh, that was a really interesting documentary, and I'm really not going to change much of anything, Or are they just going to, we're doing a podcast after watching it because it affected us so much. We were going to do a podcast on something else, but this really hit us. So, but how are we as a family going to help this, the idea of saving the earth, like that David Attenborough presented in this documentary? Like, what are we going to do?
Well, on my end, personally, I've been moving more towards a plant-based diet anyway.
Yes.
And I don't think, I understand that people don't necessarily feel they could become full vegetarians.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you can't have a diet that's more plant-based.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that for sure.
In terms of making decisions, deciding it reinforces the idea of buying local.
Yeah.
I think having the knowledge of these types of things and what's happening in the world as a whole influences our daily decisions in subtle ways and sometimes in more impactful ways.
Because I would say that one of the main reasons why that documentary was made, not only just to illuminate the amazing life that David Attenborough's had, but it's a call to action. He wants people to change the way that they think. But I wonder, and I'm curious, and I'm worried about how many people are actually going to really, take what's in this documentary and actually change everything for the positive.
Well, let me put that question back to you. What would you do? How will you change?
Yeah, pretty much the same things. I don't know exactly what more we could do. If we buy locally, we buy our groceries locally. We try to support the local farmers. We do all the regular things like recycle and reuse and do as much as that. But aside from, joining some kind of conservation group or something like that, I don't know much else that we could do. That may sound really ignorant. Maybe it is. There's probably a lot of stuff that we could do, but I don't know. I really don't know. That's a good question because it's something that definitely that this documentary has has drawn me, or has like led me to contemplate, for sure.
Well, I think, I think we do a lot of things right as a family, but I think that we can always do better.
Right. I agree with
right?
that.
We can always,
I just don't know what those things are.
it's whether it's, when you're making the decision to purchase your next vehicle, whether you decide to purchase an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
One of the interesting comments he made during the documentary was the idea that cities themselves would be far more quiet on renewable energy sources. As well. When you think about how quiet an electric vehicle is versus something that's run on diesel or gasoline.
And if you're getting your power from solar energy, it's going to be quiet. There's nothing quieter than that. It's quieter than wind, And wind is, I don't imagine it's that loud, but they're all effective ways to get energy, right? That's one thing that we could think about, like in the future, is getting some kind of solar power for our home, putting it right up on the roof.
Well, that's right. There's a lot of people who've started to implement that, and that's definitely something that we could look at doing. Yeah. I think that just having these types of conversations, the awareness, and those small decisions where we might think that one decision we make to purchase local, or that one decision we make to maybe rinse out a container so we recycle it versus throwing it into the garbage. All of those little things are, when you multiply them by the many humans who inhabit our Earth, if they're all making those types of decisions, it has significant impact on our future. Some of the other, solutions that he talked about near the end of the documentary, he talked about no fish zones in the ocean. Yeah. And obviously the oceans are, form a major part of our Earth and our overall sustainability. And he talked about the success that no fish zones have had in terms of basically fish species just flourish to the point that they overflow into the actual fishing zones. So the nearby fishing zones reap the benefits of having, larger catches. And, it's not about not fishing and stopping that industry. It's just about doing it in a sustainable fashion.
Conserving it, yeah.
So I found that part interesting. It wasn't something I had heard about before, but he does quote, he said that estimates suggest that no fish zones, over a third of our coastal seas, would be sufficient to provide us with all the fish we would ever need. And he also says that the EU, the European Union, is planning a project that will look into increasing no fish zones, and he called it the world's greatest wildlife reserve. So there's no fish zones in terms of the life, the biodiversity within our oceans would be preserved if that's implemented. So, those types of major actions are the things that are going to have a lot of impact.
That's the thing. It's really interesting because I found it in the documentary. David Attenborough touched upon the major, the huge decisions that can be made, controlling the population and moving to an agrarian agriculture or whatever, and but not so much what we as just individuals can do. We can support all those things that he talked about at the end, but what can we do? I just feel like I'm personally searching for things that ways in which to improve my attitude towards the planet.
Well, and I guess it's as with any cause that you're dealing with, it's making sure your voice is heard, whether that's through who you're voting for,
whether it's doing a podcast,
or voting for politicians that have the values that the same values as you, and will push that agenda forward,
right? Yeah.
Whether it's signing petitions or writing letters and sending emails, all of those things are part of making contributing to the global voice for change, and ultimately that's how we influence those who have the power to make the major decisions that will impact our future.
Yeah.
The end of the documentary actually goes through what the world will look like if we continue on our current path.
That was pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy. It's pretty devastating.
It starts in 2030.
And when you think about 10 years from now, we all know how fast 10 years can go by.
Yeah.
And I think what struck me with this is that when we talk about climate change, and I guess this is a bit of a selfish idea, but you often think, well, that's way down the road. It's not really going to impact me. But as he kind of went through it, when he got to the point of 2080, which is 60 years from now.
Yeah.
There were significant repercussions at that point in time. And if you think about, like for us, if we're lucky enough, depending on what the medical field is able to come up with, we may be just over 100 years old if we're that lucky. But our son would only be in his 60s at that time. So
what kind of world is he going to have?
They're and having devastating consequences at that time. And then you think of our grandkids. And you think, when you think grandkids, okay, that you could still picture that close connection between generations. They would only be in their 20s. And then he goes on to right up to the 2100s. So then if you think of those same grandkids, they would be then in their 40s.
Yeah.
At 2100, which seems so far away, but if you think about it, our grandkids could be in their 40s. So our grandkids would be our age now.
Right.
The world could be 4 degrees warmer, which seems like very little, but because of that, it would make large parts of the world uninhabitable, and millions of people would be homeless. And a 6th mass extinction event. So there's been a lot of mass extinction events when you think about dinosaurs and various eras of the history of the world. It would be well underway. So when we think about our grandkids being our age and being in that situation, if we continue on the path, that to me was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And not that we shouldn't care about, any future generations, like 300 or 400 years down the road. We definitely should care about them. But I think as humans, we do tend to think more to the immediate connection.
Yeah.
And
I find that human beings, for the most part, live in a world of amnesia. If it's not happening at this moment, like we could have crazy storm that floods everything. Actually, it happens all the time in the east part of St. John. When there's really heavy raining, it floods, and then people complain for a few days, and then they forget, they don't fix it, and it stays, and then until the next one. And then that's the kind of way that climate change is sort of received by a lot of people on this planet, I find. It's like, oh yeah, people just don't act about it.
Well, you're right. If it's not immediately in front of us, we forget about it. I mean, we're seeing that with the pandemic. We're seeing, we're fortunate enough. We're in St. John, New Brunswick, in Canada. We have relatively low infection rates in terms of COVID, and there's a lot of people who, because it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, and not understanding the devastation that the rest of the world is undergoing because of this pandemic. And it's human nature, I think, if it's not directly impacting us, we do tend to put our blinders onto it a bit. And maybe that's something that we do out of self-preservation for our own mental health, or I don't know why we do it.
I don't know why we do it either, but people are ignoring climate change as it's happening, and that is just a disservice to everybody that comes after them and themselves, because you should be doing what you can to fix it now.
One of the quotes that Attenborough says near the end of the documentary that I guess I felt it resonated with me was, he said, "The living world will endure. We humans cannot presume the same." So when he talks about the living world, plant life, other species, it'll go on, but we can't presume the same for the human species.
Right.
And he says, "We've come this far because we are the smartest creatures that have ever lived. But to continue, we require more than intelligence. We require wisdom."
Yeah.
And I found that a very powerful statement.
It was very powerful.
Yeah, we're intelligent to come up with...
We need a global wisdom, though. It can't be just like, a few countries. It has to be the entire... I would think that if there was a pressing issue that had to save the world, and we could, people would come together and try. Well, this is global war. This is like climate change.
I mean, we have a pandemic going on, and we see the world scientists coming together to find a vaccine. It's and we have the world scientists coming together to try to sound the alarm around climate change.
It's true. I mean, I just, it was very, very sobering documentary, I gotta say. I very much enjoyed it. And I hope you get to watch it as well. It's called
The Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough, and it's on Netflix in Canada, so you should be able to find it there. And I think it's airing in some cinemas as well. So definitely check it out. It's important. Tell other people about it. Spread the word, because that's how change happens.
As always, thanks for listening to the podcast, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
And remember, you can catch up on past episodes at infoquench.com.
Or just about anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And help spread the word about InfoQuench.
Till next time.